Before we dive in, I've got a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it? Drop it in the comments. It's always wild seeing how far these stories travel. Now, imagine this. Deacon St. John suddenly steps into the Red Dead Redemption 2 universe. What happens next? Let's find out. The air smells different, cleaner, too clean. Deacon notices it before he even opens his eyes. No rot, no ash, no distant echo of screams carried through pine trees. Just wind, slow, patient wind brushing through tall grass. When he finally forces himself upright, every muscle tight with the expectation of danger, the first thing he reaches for isn't a weapon. It's habit. Years of surviving a broken world taught him that waking up alive is never a guarantee. His hand searches his side for his pistol. Still there. Good. Knife on his boot. Good. But when he turns, expecting to see his bike resting nearby like an extension of his own body, there's nothing. Just open land stretching under a pale morning sky that feels almost ancient. The silence is wrong, not empty, alive. Birds move through the air like they aren't afraid of anything. In Deacon's world, animals learned quickly. Noise meant death. Movement meant attention. But here, a deer stand in the distance, heads lifting slowly, curious instead of terrified. He stays low anyway, crouching by instinct, scanning tree lines, counting escape routes. His breathing is slow, controlled, but his mind is already racing through possibilities. Camp ambush, drugged, kidnapped, but none of it fits. The ground isn't marked with tire tracks, no fences, no power lines, no distant hum of generators trying desperately to keep civilization breathing for one more night. He moves toward higher ground, boots pressing into soil that hasn't been churned by panic. The forest ahead feels untouched, like something out of a memory he's not sure is even his anymore. The deeper he walks, the more something heavy settles in his chest. Not fear, recognition. This place isn't dead, it isn't dying. It's before. Before everything went wrong. Before the world learned how fragile it really was. The realization doesn't comfort him. It makes his skin crawl. Because if this is the past, or some version of it, then nobody here knows what's coming. Nobody here understands how fast everything can collapse. A distant howl snaps him out of it. Low, sharp, close enough to matter. Deacon freezes instantly, body turning toward the sound before his brain fully processes it. His heart rate spikes, adrenaline hitting like a familiar old enemy. Wolves, maybe. But his mind doesn't say wolves. It says horde. It says run. It says find elevation, find choke points, find fire if you have to. He slides behind a fallen log, pulling his pistol free, eyes scanning for movement that moves wrong. Too fast, too many, too hungry. Leaves rustle, branches shift, shapes move between trunks. 4 of them, lean, coordinated, watching him as much as he's watching them. They step into the light slowly, gray fur catching sunlight, yellow eyes locked on him with the cold patience of predators that have never known starvation. Not infected, not twisted, just animals, real animals. The realization hits like whiplash. His grip loosens slightly, breath leaving him in a slow, controlled release he didn't realize he was holding. But he doesn't lower the weapon. Old habits don't disappear just because the world looks prettier. The wolves circle once, uncertain, sensing something off about him, like he smells wrong, like he belongs somewhere else. After a tense moment, they retreat back into the trees, leaving only the sound of wind and Deacon's pulse hammering in his ears. He holsters the pistol slowly, rubbing a hand across his beard, eyes scanning the horizon again. No freakers, no burned towns, no emergency broadcasts repeating into empty air. Just land, endless land. And for the first time since he woke up, the real fear settles in. Not the fear of dying, but the fear of not understanding where he is. Because if the world isn't broken yet, then he's the only thing here that is. He keeps moving, not because he has a destination, but because standing still has never kept him alive for long. The terrain begins to shift as the sun climbs higher. Forests thinning into open plains, broken by scattered rock formations and winding dirt paths that look carved by years of hooves and wagon wheels instead of engines and asphalt. Deacon kneels near one of the tracks, brushing his fingers over hardened mud. The grooves are deep, uneven, older than anything modern. No rubber marks, no oil stains, just raw earth shaped by weight and repetition. His jaw tightens. This isn't some isolated wilderness pocket. This is a world built on something older, slower, like time itself moves differently here. A faint sound drifts through the air. Not wind, not animals, metal, distant, rhythmic, deliberate. Deacon turns toward it, head tilting slightly as he listens, clinking, leather shifting, the creak of wood under stress. He moves toward it carefully, staying low through tall grass until the land slopes downward into a narrow trail cut between hills. And then he sees them. Riders. 4 of them, moving at an easy pace, rifles resting across saddles like it's second nature. Horses snort and stamp against the earth, muscles shifting under sunlight. For a moment, Deacon just watches, brain trying to reconcile the image with anything familiar. No engines, no radios, no signs of anything past the early 1900s. It's like watching a ghost memory play out in real time. His first instinct is to stay hidden, observe, learn. But one of the horses lifts its head sharply, ears flicking toward him. Animals again, too aware. One of the riders follows the horse's gaze, eyes narrowing as he scans the grass line. Deacon knows that look. The look of someone who's lived long enough to trust instinct over comfort. He stands slowly, hands visible, posture loose but ready. The riders pull back slightly, hands hovering near holsters, tension moving through the group like electricity. The one in front. Broad shoulders, steady posture, eyes that look tired in a way Deacon recognizes immediately. Studies him without speaking. Neither of them rush the moment. It's a silent measurement. Survivor recognizing survivor. The wind shifts between them, carrying sense neither fully understands. Finally, one of the riders speaks, voice rough, cautious. The accent is thick, old, grounded in a time Deacon has only heard in history, recordings, and old movies. The words don't matter as much as the tone. Suspicion, control, readiness for violence if needed. Deacon answers carefully, voice low, measured, choosing words that won't sound insane. He doesn't talk about freakers, doesn't talk about outbreaks or collapsing governments. He just says he got lost, been traveling, looking for somewhere safe. The leader watches him a second longer than feels comfortable, like he's weighing something deeper than the words. Then he nods once, small, but enough to lower the tension by a fraction. They offer water, real water, from a leather canteen that smells like sun and dust. Deacon drinks slowly, forcing himself not to empty it in one pull. The simple act hits him harder than expected. No plastic, no purification tablets, just something pulled from a living world. He hands it back with a quiet nod, wiping his mouth, eyes flicking between each of them, memorizing faces, gear, posture. Outlaws, maybe, or lawmen. Hard to tell, but not monsters. As they ride together down the trail, Deacon keeps pace on foot, refusing the offer to ride for now. He needs to feel the ground, needs to understand it. And as the horizon opens wider ahead of him, a realization settles deeper into his bones. This world isn't at the end of something. It's at the edge of it. And for the first time in years, Deacon St. John is walking into a world that still has something left to lose. The trail curves along a shallow ridge, revealing a valley washed in late morning gold. Smoke rises in thin, steady lines from distant chimneys, Not the violent black pillars Deacon associates with collapse, but controlled, domestic, like people here still believe tomorrow is something you plan for. The riders don't rush him with questions. They watch him the way frontier men watch weather, patient, cautious, accepting that some things reveal themselves only with time. Deacon notices how they space themselves naturally. Not military formation, not gang chaos, just experience. Each man covering a different angle without speaking. It reminds him of old militia patrols from the early outbreak days before panic replaced discipline. The man leading them finally shifts his horse closer, studying Deacon from a better angle. Up close, Deacon sees scars, old ones, the kind you earn from living hard, not from surviving monsters. The man asks where Deacon learned to move like that. Quiet, efficient, never wasting energy. Deacon shrugs slightly, eyes forward, saying only, "Bad places." The answer seems to satisfy something unspoken. No follow-up, just a slow nod, like that tells him everything he needs to know. They pass a broken wagon half sunk into dirt, wheels splintered, supplies long gone. Deacon pauses beside it for half a second, eyes scanning automatically for signs of scavengers, ambush patterns, defensive positioning. One of the riders notices, asks if he was military. Deacon gives a half answer, something like that. It's easier than explaining a world where normal people had to become soldiers just to survive grocery runs. The rider chuckles low, muttering something about another man running from a war. Deacon doesn't correct him. In a way, it's true. Hours stretch quietly as the sun climbs higher, heat settling into the land. Deacon listens more than he talks. He picks up pieces of conversation. Towns, rail lines, lawmen, outlaws, Pinkertons. The names mean nothing yet, but the structure does. Power, control, conflict, civilization trying to hold itself together with rules and guns and reputation. He studies their weapons too. Revolvers, repeaters, slower than modern firearms, louder but reliable, repairable, built for a world without supply chains. There's something brutally honest about that. If something breaks here, you fix it yourself, or you die. At one point the wind shifts again, carrying the distant sound of cattle and human voices. Faint, but unmistakably peaceful. Deacon feels something tighten in his chest. Not nostalgia, not exactly. Something heavier. This is what people fought to protect, back when the world still made sense. Families, work, community. Things he watched vanish in months back home. He wonders briefly if somewhere in time someone fought just as hard to protect this exact moment and lost anyway. The riders eventually slow near a creek, horses stepping into cool water with visible relief. One of them dismounts, splashing water across his face. Another checks saddle straps with practiced hands. Deacon kneels near the bank, cupping water into his hands, letting the cold shock run through him. No chemical aftertaste, no faint film of contamination. Just water, real water. He almost laughs, but stops himself. Instead, he watches his reflection ripple across the surface. Older than he remembers, harder, like a man carved out of a world that no longer exists. The leader steps beside him, silent for a moment before speaking again, voice quieter now. He asks if Deacon's running from something, or toward something. The question hangs heavy in the air. Deacon stares at the water, watching the current carry leaves downstream without resistance. Finally, he answers, voice low, just trying to stay alive. The man nods slowly, like that answer fits perfectly in this world too. No judgment, no surprise, just understanding. As they prepare to move again, Deacon feels it settle deeper. This place isn't temporary. This isn't a hallucination or a dream, or some post-trauma break from reality. The dirt under his boots is real. The people are real. And somewhere beyond these hills, entire towns are waking up, working, living, completely unaware of how fragile it all really is. And for the first time since he arrived, Deacon isn't just scanning for danger anymore. He's studying a world that hasn't fallen yet. The afternoon light softens as clouds begin drifting lazily across the sky, shadows stretching longer across the valley floor. The riders guide their horses along the creek before angling toward higher ground again, following a trail that looks less traveled. Deacon senses the shift immediately. This isn't just movement anymore. It's caution. One of the men rides slightly ahead, scanning ridge lines. Another drifts behind, casually watching their back trail. Not paranoid, just prepared. It's the kind of quiet, tactical awareness Deacon respects, the kind that usually means whoever taught them is still alive, or they learned it the hard way. The land opens into scattered trees and low hills, the wind carrying new smells. Wood smoke, livestock, leather, and something else. Civilization. Not cities, not highways, but people, groups. Life gathered in pockets, stubborn and determined. Deacon slows slightly, letting the riders move a few steps ahead as he studies the horizon. A small settlement sits in the distance, buildings clustered close together like they're trying to stay warm against time itself. Wagons parked outside, fences, movement, normal life. The sight hits him harder than any battlefield ever did, because normal life is what he lost. One of the riders notices him staring and follows his gaze. "Town's a few miles out," he says, voice casual but observant. "You look like you ain't seen one in a while." Deacon exhales slowly, running a hand across the back of his neck. "Something like that," he answers, keeping his tone neutral. But inside, memories flicker. Abandoned checkpoints, empty gas stations, faded missing posters flapping against cracked walls. He forces the images down. That world isn't here. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They continue forward, and the closer they get, the more detail fills in. Laundry lines moving in the wind, kids running between buildings, dogs barking lazily instead of warning of danger. Every small sound feels wrong to Deacon, because it's safe, or at least safe enough for people to pretend. And that's when it finally settles deep in his bones. This world isn't ignorant, it's hopeful. And hope is something Deacon hasn't trusted in a very long time. As they crest a final hill, the leader slows his horse, looking out over the settlement like a man who's seen too many places rise and fall. "World's changing," he mutters almost to himself. "Folks just don't see it yet." Deacon studies him carefully, hearing something familiar in those words. Not panic, not denial, just quiet acceptance that nothing lasts forever. It reminds Deacon of the early days, when some people knew exactly how bad things were going to get, and still chose to live anyway. They start down toward the road leading to town, but Deacon lingers one step behind, boots pressing into dirt that still remembers wagon wheels instead of tank tracks. The wind brushes past him again, warm now, carrying voices and life and the fragile illusion that tomorrow will look like today. He closes his eyes for half a second, letting the sound exist without analyzing it. Because somewhere deep down, he knows something nobody here does. Worlds don't collapse loudly at first. They collapse quietly. And as Deacon St. John steps forward toward a civilization that still believes it has time, a single thought settles into place with cold certainty. If this world is still standing, then maybe he didn't just arrive here by accident. Maybe he arrived here early. The town breathes in a rhythm Deacon doesn't trust yet. Wooden storefronts creak gently in the afternoon heat, boots scrape across packed dirt roads, and somewhere nearby, a hammer strikes metal in steady, patient intervals. Every sound is purposeful, predictable. That predictability makes his nerves itch. In his world, routine was something people clung to right before everything shattered. He walks beside the riders as they guide their horses through the main road, eyes moving constantly without looking frantic. Windows, roof lines, alley gaps. Anyone lingering too long in one place. He maps it all instinctively, the way other men might admire architecture or shop displays. Survival turned his brain into a machine that never truly powers down. People stare, but not with fear, curiosity, suspicion. Outsiders exist here, but they're noticed. A woman pauses mid-conversation on a porch. Two men outside a saloon shift their stance slightly, not aggressive, just ready. Deacon respects that. A town that watches strangers is a town that lasts longer. One of the riders finally gestures toward a hitching post, offering again to get him on horseback. Deacon studies the animal up close this time, hand hovering near its neck before finally resting there. Warm, alive, powerful in a way machines never were. He exhales slowly and swings into the saddle with rough efficiency. Not graceful, but controlled. The horse shifts under him, testing balance. Deacon adjusts instantly, lowering his center of gravity without thinking. Years of riding a bike at high speed across broken highways translated into something surprisingly functional here. They lead him toward a smaller camp just outside the main town line, a temporary resting point where wagons sit in loose formation and a few bedrolls are already laid out. The leader dismounts first, boots hitting dirt with quiet authority. The others follow. Deacon slides off the horse, landing light, already scanning terrain. Tree line distance, fire pit placement, sight lines from nearby hills. He doesn't comment on it, but he notes everything. If this camp was attacked, half these men would be dead before they even reached their rifles. The thought isn't judgment, it's calculation. One of the riders notices Deacon's slow turn, the way he studies the environment like he's memorizing it. He asks what Deacon's looking for. Deacon answers honestly this time. Weak spots. There's a moment of silence. Then one of the men laughs, low and surprised, like he's not sure if that answer is a joke. The leader doesn't laugh. He looks around slowly, following Deacon's earlier line of sight. For the first time, there's the faintest shift in his expression, not offense, interest. He asks Deacon where he'd move the fire. Deacon points without hesitation, suggesting higher ground, less smoke trapping, better visibility. He mentions rotating watch positions without using military terms. Just practical language, simple survival. The men exchange looks, and something subtle changes in the air. Not acceptance, not yet, but recognition that this stranger isn't guessing. He's remembering. They move the fire pit before sunset. Not dramatically, not like they are taking orders, but casually enough that nobody in town would think twice about it. Deacon helps without being asked, digging into the earth with steady, efficient motions, packing the dirt down so sparks will not travel if the wind shifts. The work is simple, grounded, and for a moment it almost feels normal. Physical tasks always helped him think, helped him stay ahead of panic. One of the younger men watches how Deacon stacks wood, alternating thickness, leaving space for airflow. He asks where Deacon learned that. Deacon answers with a small shrug, saying it is easier to build a fire right the first time than fix it when it is already killing you. As evening creeps in, camp settles into a rhythm that reminds Deacon of old survivor encampments, just without the constant edge of collapse. Someone checks horses, someone cleans weapons, someone cooks, everyone contributes something. That part feels familiar. What feels strange is the lack of desperation behind it. These men are not surviving minute to minute. They are living, planning weeks ahead, talking about trade routes and supply runs like tomorrow is guaranteed. Deacon listens quietly, absorbing names of nearby towns, rivers, ranches. Every piece of information files away automatically, forming a mental map he might need later. Charles is the first one to really test him, not aggressively, just quietly observant. He walks with Deacon toward the tree line under the excuse of checking for predators before nightfall. The forest is darker now, shadows stretching long between trunks. Charles watches how Deacon moves, how his boots find quiet ground without looking down. Finally, Charles asks if Deacon has tracked people before, not animals, people. Deacon does not answer right away. He kneels near disturbed soil, brushing his fingers across it. Wagon passed through earlier, 2 horses, one rider heavier than the other. He says it casually, like reading weather patterns. When he finally answers, he just says sometimes. Charles nods slowly, like he expected that. He points out broken bark on a nearby tree, asking what Deacon sees. Deacon studies it, then explains how someone tied a horse there recently, not too long ago, rope fibers still stuck in the bark grooves. Charles gives a small, approving look. Not praise, just respect. In that moment, something shifts. Deacon is not just a stranger anymore. He is someone useful, someone who understands how fragile safety really is. Back at camp, tension finds him from another direction. Micah, loud, smiling without warmth. The kind of man Deacon learned to spot early in the collapse. The kind who thrives when rules disappear. Micah circles conversation like a wolf testing fences, throwing questions disguised as jokes. Where you from? Who you running from? Why you move like you expect ghosts? Deacon answers calmly, never defensive, never offering more than needed. That seems to bother Micah more than any insult could. Dinner is quiet, but not unfriendly. Deacon eats slowly, conserving out of habit even though food is clearly not scarce here. He notices who eats fast, who eats last, who watches everyone else while pretending not to. Camp dynamics are universal. Civilization changes. People do not. As night fully settles, stars stretch across the sky in a way Deacon has not seen in years. No light pollution. No distant burning cities staining the horizon orange. Just endless black sky and cold white stars that existed long before any world ended. For the first time since arriving, his shoulders lower slightly. Not safe, never safe, but stable. And stability is something he almost forgot existed. Still, even as quiet conversations drift around the fire, Deacon's eyes keep moving, watching shadows, watching tree lines, because survival is not something you turn off just because the world looks peaceful. And deep down, part of him already knows. Peace is just another phase. And phases always change. The first night settles over the camp like a heavy blanket, the kind that promises calm but never guarantees it. Deacon sits slightly apart, just far enough to observe without drawing attention. The fire crackles, sending sparks up into the air, and he watches the riders interact, noting small patterns. Who speaks for authority, who defers, who listens quietly but observes sharply. It's a hierarchy written in behavior, not words. A hierarchy that mirrors what he's seen in survivor camps during the outbreak. In his world, recognizing that pattern early often meant the difference between life and death. Here, it's no different. Only the stakes are slower, quieter, measured in reputations and gunpowder rather than disease and rotting streets. Deacon's mind drifts briefly to his own survival methods, tactics honed over years of constant threat. He begins quietly cataloging how each man in camp moves. The one who keeps his hand near his weapon at all times. The one whose eyes constantly flick to entry points. The one who carries himself as if expecting trouble, even when none is obvious. It's instinct, observation, preparation, and the leaders notice. Charles nods subtly at him once, almost imperceptibly, acknowledging that Deacon sees what most outsiders wouldn't. Micah, on the other hand, smirks, trying to provoke a reaction, testing boundaries. Deacon doesn't rise to it, just watches, calculates. By dawn, Deacon has already mapped the perimeter in his mind. He knows where the fire will cast blind spots, which trees could conceal an ambush, which hills allow observation without exposure. When the sun rises, he's already moving through drills in his head. How he would defend this camp if the worst happened tonight. How he'd reposition riders to cover escape routes. How he could manage supplies efficiently to avoid unnecessary trips into dangerous territory. These are second nature skills, ingrained during years of living in constant apocalypse. In the RDR2 world, they're almost revolutionary. The horses stir as the morning mist begins to lift. Deacon approaches them, checking their hooves, their harnesses, their behavior. He doesn't have a name for every breed, doesn't need to. He just reads their movements the way he reads people: posture, reaction, subtle tension in muscles. One horse twitches nervously at a passing wind. He steps closer, moving deliberately, showing calm confidence, and the animal settles. Charles watches silently, impressed without comment. Deacon isn't just surviving, he's adapting. The same instincts that kept him alive against freakers and raiders are just as effective against the wild unpredictability of the frontier. Breakfast is quiet but functional. Deacon helps prepare it, moving efficiently, cleaning without instruction, storing leftovers with meticulous attention. He notices the younger men eye him with curiosity. They're learning, not just from orders, but from observation. One tries to mimic how Deacon ties a rope knot for securing a wagon. Another studies his method for preparing the fire. Without speaking much, Deacon is already influencing this camp, shaping survival practices in a world that hasn't yet been broken. When the group finally mounts to continue their journey, Deacon rides near the back, keeping an eye on all sides. The trail ahead winds through hills and valleys, sometimes opening into plains, sometimes narrowing into thick woodlands. Deacon notes every bend, every shadow, every potential threat. He adapts naturally to horseback travel, combining his urban survival reflexes with new techniques. When the leader signals a pause, Deacon dismounts and moves quietly to scout a ridge above the trail. The others notice, but say nothing. He studies tracks, broken branches, disturbed soil, all signs of human activity. A small band of outlaws passed here recently, maybe 2 or 3, armed but not expecting serious resistance. Deacon notes the optimal ambush point should it be necessary, making mental calculations of distance, line of sight, and escape routes. By midday, they come across a small river crossing. Deacon's eyes immediately scan both banks, noting areas where attackers could conceal themselves, assessing water depth, current speed, and potential hazards for horses and wagons. He steps into the shallow water first, testing footing for safety, then signals the others to cross one at a time. Every move is deliberate, practiced, and efficient. One of the younger riders whispers a surprised, "How'd you know that?" Deacon doesn't answer, just watches the water ripple past, thinking about the countless times a single misstep in his world meant death. The day continues with similar lessons. How to navigate the wilderness without leaving obvious trails, how to ration water and food effectively, how to read subtle cues in the environment for danger. Deacon's presence changes the dynamic of the group. He isn't a leader yet, but he is undeniably a force of competence. By late afternoon, as the camp prepares to set up again, Charles remarks quietly about Deacon's ability to adapt so quickly to this world. Deacon just shrugs, not out of modesty, but because adaptation is survival. It's what he knows. It's what he does. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the ground, Deacon finally allows himself a moment to reflect. The frontier may move slower than the chaos he's used to, but it is no less dangerous. Every step, every interaction, every decision could be the difference between life and death. And Deacon St. John is already proving he can thrive here, blending modern survival instincts with frontier realities, turning a world that moves carefully into a place where he can still control outcomes. The night promises calm, but Deacon knows better. Survival isn't a matter of moments. It's a way of thinking. And the way he's learning to think here in the Red Dead universe may just make him unstoppable. Night descends slowly over the camp, stretching shadows across the hills and painting the valley in deep shades of indigo. Deacon sits slightly apart from the group this time, watching the riders move through the camp with practiced ease. Every motion, every glance, every subtle shift in posture tells him more about them than words ever could. He notices who keeps an eye on the fire, who checks the perimeter, who positions themselves to cover blind spots. In his world, this level of attention often separated life from death. Here, in a slower, more deliberate world, it sets him apart. The knowledge hums in his brain, calculating, predicting, storing. A survival machine that never sleeps. Deacon's eyes keep scanning even as the fire crackles between the group, the orange glow illuminating faces hardened by the frontier. Micah prowls near the edge of the camp, eyes darting, smirking at anything that could provoke or unsettle. Deacon's attention sharpens automatically. He doesn't engage, doesn't react overtly, but his body language sends a quiet warning. Any misstep, and he's prepared. Micah senses it too. There's a tension now, subtle, unspoken, like two predators sizing each other up. But unlike Micah, Deacon's calm isn't born of arrogance. It's earned, rooted in countless nights spent in ruined cities, haunted by empty streets, hunted by humans and freaks alike. Charles sits nearby, methodically sharpening a knife. Deacon watches him, noting the care and precision, the rhythm of his movements. He stands and moves beside him, picking up a smaller blade to demonstrate his own method. Every motion is deliberate, edge angle, pressure, balance. Charles leans closer, silent approval in his expression. There's no need for words. In this shared understanding of survival, respect is conveyed through competence, not speech. Deacon realizes that despite the slower pace of this world, the rules remain the same. Awareness, efficiency, adaptability. When the camp finally settles for the night, Deacon positions himself near the fire, not for warmth, but to maintain visibility of the surrounding terrain. He marks entry points, potential cover, and vantage spots without a single piece of paper or tool. His mind is a map of threats and opportunities. Sleep comes later in short, careful bursts. Even as his eyes close, awareness never fully fades. Every rustle of leaves, snap of twig, shift of wind carries meaning. In his world, instinct was survival. Here, instinct is adaptation. The next morning, the group begins preparing for the day's ride. Deacon assists without needing instruction, gathering water, tending to horses, distributing supplies. Every action is precise, economical. He observes the younger riders, noting hesitation or inefficiency, subtly adjusting their methods without drawing attention. By the time they mount, the group operates more cohesively. Deacon's influence is quiet but unmistakable. Skills honed in a dead world are now shaping this living one, teaching patience and preparation alongside speed and decisiveness. As they ride through the rugged terrain, Deacon takes the lead on scouting. His eyes catch the smallest detail, a shifted stone indicating recent passage, a bent branch suggesting hidden tracks. He interprets these signs effortlessly, mapping potential risks and opportunities. One of the riders whispers to another, impressed at how quickly the stranger adapts. Deacon doesn't respond. Observation is more valuable than praise. In this world, understanding the environment is the difference between thriving and falling behind. By afternoon, the trail brings them to a rocky pass overlooking a valley below. The wind carries scents of livestock, smoke, and distant wood fires. Deacon moves to the edge, scanning for ambushes or hazards. He notices subtle movement in the tree line across the valley. Perhaps hunters, perhaps bandits. Without hesitation, he instructs the riders to take alternate paths that provide cover while maintaining sight lines. His commands are clear, concise, precise. They follow without question. Here, skill and survival instinct command respect. As the group makes camp that evening, Deacon reflects on the lessons of the day. Horses, trails, terrain, weather, and human behavior. All studied, cataloged, and applied. Survival in this world requires patience, awareness, and adaptability, and he's mastering all three at once. The younger riders watch, learning from every move. Even Micah, though resistant, cannot hide a flicker of acknowledgement that Deacon's methods work. When darkness finally falls, Deacon sits again slightly apart, letting the firelight wash over his face. The stars above are bright, distant, and endless. A reminder that while the world here moves slowly, the rules of survival remain unchanged. He is adapted. He is observed. He is influenced. And though this frontier is different from the wastelands he once knew, the lessons he carries, the instincts he's honed, and the skills he's mastered have made him not just a survivor, but a force in this new world. Deacon St. John has arrived, and the frontier will never be the same. The night feels heavier than usual, a thick blanket settling over the camp that carries more than just darkness. Deacon sits slightly apart, watching the fire dance between the logs, shadows stretching and twisting across the clearing. Every crackle, every pop draws his attention, not because it signals danger, but because his body has learned to treat sound like information. In the distance, the valley seems peaceful, the stars twinkling faintly through the canopy, but his eyes search relentlessly. He knows this world has no freakers, no collapsing cities, no infected hordes tearing through streets, but the memory of them is in him, always in him. A simple howl of a wolf from the nearby hills causes his hand to twitch toward his weapon before he even realizes it. His body moves faster than thought, faster than understanding, faster than control. Deacon forces himself to relax, but not completely. He has learned that trauma doesn't go away just because the threat has changed form. The past lingers in the muscles, in the twitch of a finger, in the sharp intake of breath before the mind catches up. Here, in this frontier, the ghosts of what he survived follow him invisibly, haunting him not with flesh, but with instinct. Every campfire shadow feels like movement, every sudden gust of wind like something approaching. He scans tree lines and hillsides the way he always has, counting, calculating, imagining the worst-case scenario. Morning comes too quickly, pale light filtering through tall pines, and the group mounts their horses to continue down the trail. Deacon falls in behind naturally, scanning the edges of the path, noting every detail that might indicate human presence, animal activity, or hidden danger. A sudden snap of a branch from above sends his heart hammering. Reflexively, he ducks low and spins, gun ready, eyes locking on the shadow of a hawk as it lifts off the limb. Adrenaline lingers in his veins long after the harmless bird has flown. The younger riders glance at him with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Deacon does not explain. There are no words to make a trained survival instinct sound normal. Hours later, they enter a narrow canyon, steep cliffs rising on either side, funneling the group into a confined path. The terrain itself becomes a natural test, restricting movement, limiting sight lines, and amplifying tension. Deacon rides at the back, observing how each rider positions themselves, noting both their weaknesses and strengths. The ground bears subtle signs of recent passage, footprints in soft soil, disturbed brush along the edges. He interprets these quickly, the same way he once calculated the approach of hordes. 2 humans moving through this area could be dangerous enough. In his old world, a dozen infected would have been enough to test his limits. Here the stakes are different, but the instinct remains. Suddenly, movement flares from the side of this canyon, figures darting across the rocks with speed and precision. Deacon's pulse spikes instantly. His hand goes to his revolver, finger hovering. They are not infected, but the instinct kicks in anyway, a ghost reflex of survival. The figures turn out to be bandits, human threats using the terrain to their advantage. Deacon's body doesn't hesitate. He moves forward, directing riders to take positions, aiming his weapon with practiced efficiency, every decision split second but precise. Within moments, the situation is controlled, the bandits either retreating or neutralized without chaos. The younger riders are wide-eyed, impressed, terrified, uncertain of what they just witnessed. Afterward, the canyon feels heavier, oppressive, The echoes of the brief confrontation linger. Deacon dismounts, kneeling near a patch of dirt where footprints intersected. He studies the patterns quietly, noting weapon marks, shoe types, and paths of movement. He realizes that even in a world that hasn't fallen completely, humans are capable of the same savagery that once tore his own world apart. And for the first time since he arrived, he notices how much this realization weighs on him. The frontier may move slower, it may appear less dangerous than the world he came from, but it is no less capable of chaos and death. By nightfall, the camp is established again, and the fire burns low. Deacon sits slightly apart, staring into the flames, his mind replaying the events of the canyon, overlaying them with memories from his past. Each encounter with danger here resonates differently, echoing moments where he was outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by relentless monsters. The threat is human, slower, less chaotic, but no less real. His body is on high alert, even as his mind tries to rationalize calm. Sleep will be fleeting tonight. The fire throws shadows across the clearing, shapes that seem alive, and Deacon tracks them instinctively, muscles tense, every nerve alert. Charles walks over quietly, noticing the tension in Deacon's shoulders. Without asking, he sits nearby, giving space but providing silent acknowledgement. Deacon appreciates it without comment, aware that in a world where trust is earned slowly, respect often comes in subtle ways. For the first time, he allows himself a small sigh, not relief, but recognition. The ghosts of his past may always follow him, but here they are shadows that he can manage. Here the rules of survival still apply, and he is still the master of them. As the night stretches on, Deacon reflects on the difference between monsters and humans. In his world, the infected were predictable in their destruction, driven by instinct. Humans are more complex, more dangerous, less forgiving. In the quiet moments, he realizes that this world tests him differently. It forces patience, observation, and strategic thinking over raw speed and reflex. And yet, it is still a battlefield, just slower, more deliberate, with lives at stake that depend not just on luck, but on the careful application of skill. Deacon closes his eyes briefly, the stars above a stark reminder of time and scale. The frontier feels vast, eternal even, but he knows that danger lurks in its shadows. Ghosts of hordes past have sharpened him, and even if this world has no hordes, it has its own trials. Humans, greed, desperation, ambition, fear. They are the new monsters here, and Deacon St. John, trained by apocalypse, honed by loss, and tempered by years of survival, is already preparing to face them with the same unflinching focus that kept him alive when the world ended. The morning brings a fragile light, diffused through a thin layer of mist hanging over the valley. Deacon rises first, careful not to disturb the rest of the camp. His eyes sweep the terrain instinctively, cataloging every ridge, dip, and tree line. Even here, in a world that isn't collapsing, every landscape carries threats. Footprints along the dirt, bent grass from animals, distant smoke. All of it is data. He moves quietly to a nearby ridge, scanning for the smallest irregularities. Each movement is deliberate, calculated, a choreography honed from years when hesitation meant death. As the riders begin to stir and prepare for the day, Deacon studies them too. He notes the young men who still fumble with gear, the ones who speak too loudly or look to others for guidance. Micah prowls nearby, as loud and intrusive as always, trying to provoke, trying to unsettle. Deacon doesn't respond, but he watches. Every subtle shift in posture, every glance, every inflection carries meaning. It's a language he understands from living in constant danger, from reading intentions in seconds where others might take minutes. He's teaching them without speaking, his presence a silent lesson in caution, awareness, and control. The group begins to move down a narrow valley that winds through dense forest, the canopy above filtering sunlight into long streaks across the dirt path. Deacon rides slightly behind the leader, eyes scanning the edges, mapping potential ambush points, noting where underbrush is thick enough to conceal threats. A bird takes flight suddenly, wings flapping against the quiet. His body reacts instantly, hand hovering near his revolver. In a flash, he distinguishes harmless wildlife from potential predators, a reflex drilled into him through years of surviving hordes. The younger riders flinch at his sudden readiness, and Charles, riding silently beside him, offers a subtle nod of approval. The trail narrows further, forcing the riders into a single-file line. Deacon slows to match pace but never drops vigilance. Broken branches, disturbed soil, and faint footprints tell him a small group passed here recently. Likely outlaws or scouts. He points them out quietly to the group without explanation, guiding them along a safer path. The difference between safe passage and danger is often invisible to the untrained eye, but Deacon's mind reads it like text. The younger riders start to follow his cues, adjusting instinctively to his rhythm. A sudden movement in the brush catches him. A figure crouched, watching. Deacon freezes instantly, assessing the threat. Muscles coil, reflexes sharpen. The figure steps back, revealing a lone traveler, unarmed but wary. Deacon's tension eases slightly, but he doesn't lower his guard completely. In his world, people are often more dangerous than monsters. The traveler nods nervously, giving a polite, almost fragile greeting. Deacon responds in kind, voice calm, measured, controlling the exchange without revealing uncertainty. The young riders observe silently, noting the delicate balance between caution and trust. As the group continues, Deacon reflects on the differences in threat here versus his own past. There are no hordes, no relentless waves of infected tearing at fences, but humans carry unpredictability that can be just as lethal. Bandits, rival gangs, disputes over resources, all slower, more deliberate forms of danger. But the instincts remain the same: patience, awareness, preparation. Deacon feels a strange sense of clarity in this world. The slower pace allows him to observe, to plan, and to teach those around him without drawing unnecessary attention. By midday, the group reaches a clearing with a small stream. Deacon dismounts first, checking the water and surrounding terrain. He observes the flow, the depth, the sound of movement that might indicate larger predators downstream. Every detail matters. He gestures to the riders, guiding them across efficiently, preventing bottlenecks that could leave them vulnerable. The younger riders start mirroring his methods, and even Micah, though resistant, follows without argument, the weight of experience impossible to ignore. As they set up a temporary rest, Deacon begins to organize supplies, arranging gear for quick access, noting what might be needed first in an emergency. The younger riders watch, silent, learning through observation. Here, in a world that hasn't yet crumbled, survival is still survival. The rules may be slower, the threats different, but the principles remain: awareness, efficiency, and adaptability. Deacon St. John is not just surviving, he is shaping those around him, leaving a mark that will ripple through the frontier long after this day ends. The afternoon sun drifts low, painting the landscape in warm amber light, and Deacon moves along the edge of the camp with quiet purpose. He inspects horses, their hooves, harnesses, and feeding areas, ensuring each animal is ready for the next stretch. This is more than routine, it's preparation. In his old world, a single overlooked detail could spell disaster. Here in the frontier, that discipline sets him apart. Every young rider watches silently, absorbing his motions, the way he handles danger before it even appears, the way he reads terrain and people like an open book. Deacon doesn't speak much. He doesn't need to. Actions teach faster than words ever could. The terrain shifts as they begin moving again, a series of rolling hills giving way to a narrow canyon that snakes through the valley. Deacon takes position at the rear, scanning all sides, his eyes catching subtle changes. A patch of disturbed soil, a faint trail of broken brush, a shadow moving against the sun. Every detail becomes a potential threat, every shadow a clue. A sudden call from a raven triggers his attention, hand instinctively hovering over his revolver. He pauses for a heartbeat, reading the rhythm of the wind and the movement of the trees. Nothing approaches, and the group continues. But the younger riders start noticing the meticulous awareness that defines Deacon. As they round a bend, Deacon spots a small band of riders in the distance, moving cautiously along a ridge parallel to their trail. Their posture and spacing indicate scouts, potentially dangerous but not immediately aggressive. Deacon studies their movements silently, calculating angles, lines of sight, and approach strategies. He gestures subtly to Charles, who adjusts his position without question. Micah, noticing the subtle coordination, grins smugly, but stays quiet, sensing the efficiency of a man shaped by a world where hesitation meant death. Deacon doesn't acknowledge Micah. He doesn't need to. Survival doesn't require ego, it requires precision. The scouts notice them, raising an alarm in low voices. Deacon responds instantly, signaling riders to take natural cover behind rocks and tree lines. His mind races, calculating distance, reaction times, and potential outcomes. He knows the humans here are clever, patient, and unpredictable. Not monsters, not hordes, but still deadly. Within minutes, the scouts assess the situation and retreat, leaving only the echo of horses' hooves fading into the distance. Deacon exhales slowly, lowering his revolver, but his muscles remain coiled. In his world, even a successful engagement leaves the body ready for the next one. The younger riders stare in a mix of awe and apprehension. Charles finally offers a quiet compliment, noting Deacon's instinctive understanding of both terrain and human behavior. Deacon doesn't respond verbally. He simply adjusts the camp layout once they reach a safe clearing, moving supplies, arranging tents, and optimizing lines of sight for visibility and defense. Each motion is deliberate, informed by years of navigating dangers that never pause. He is teaching survival by example, and the group absorbs every detail without realizing it. As night begins to fall, Deacon steps to a ridge overlooking the camp, surveying the surrounding hills, valleys, and forests. The quiet world around him feels peaceful, almost serene, but he knows better. Danger is not always immediate. It's subtle, patient, waiting for mistakes. The memory of hordes from his past lingers like a shadow, sharpening his senses even in a world that seems calm. He traces lines of movement, paths humans or animals might take, escape routes, and vantage points. The younger riders begin to notice his absence, searching for him. When they see him perched on the ridge, calm and alert, they understand without needing to speak. Deacon is always aware. Later, near the fire, Deacon observes the dynamic within the camp. Micah tries to assert dominance, pushing minor challenges to gauge reactions. Deacon ignores him, yet his mere presence shifts the balance. The younger riders instinctively mirror Deacon's discipline, holding positions, checking weapons, and observing quietly. Even Charles remarks that Deacon moves like he's already survived the worst the world has to offer and then some. Deacon doesn't correct him. That's the truth. Every habit, every reflex, every calculated move is born of the apocalypse that he survived, honed for efficiency, adaptability, and control. As darkness deepens, the stars overhead illuminate the ridge, casting silver across the camp. Deacon allows himself a brief moment to relax, but only slightly. The world may seem peaceful, but he knows it is deceptive. Even without hordes, even without the collapse of cities and roads, human unpredictability creates dangers that demand vigilance. Survival is never complete. It is a constant exercise in awareness, strategy, and adaptability. Deacon St. John sits back watching his fellow riders settle, reflecting on the lessons the frontier teaches him. Patience, observation, strategic thinking. These are different from his old world's speed and chaos, yet equally vital. He has adapted, influencing the group silently, preparing them for the dangers that may come, and proving that even a man forged in a dead world can thrive in a world that is still alive. The fire crackles low, the night stretches on, and somewhere in the shadows, Deacon senses movement, not of hordes, but of humans. The lessons of the past and the present converge within him. He knows that tomorrow will bring more tests, more challenges, and that the frontier may be slower, but it is no less lethal. Deacon is ready, and the frontier is learning to respect him. The night grows colder as the camp settles under the endless expanse of stars. Deacon remains slightly apart from the others, letting the younger riders move about, tending to horses, checking weapons, or quietly speaking among themselves. He sits on a fallen log near the ridge, eyes tracing the tree line and the shadows stretching across the valley. The past follows him like a phantom. Even in this peaceful frontier, the instinct to scan, to anticipate danger, to never trust calm completely is ingrained. Years of fleeing, fighting, surviving in a world overrun with the dead and the desperate have left marks that even time cannot erase. The memory of hordes past comes unbidden. He recalls the groaning streets, the endless moans, the swarm that moved like a tide, relentless and unstoppable. That chaos was predictable in its own terrifying way. The monsters were drawn to noise, movement, and blood, simple rules that anyone could observe and exploit. Here the dangers are subtler, slower, but more complex. Humans can hide intentions, strike when you least expect it, manipulate terrain, and influence one another. The threats are calculated, deliberate, and perhaps more dangerous in the long term. Deacon knows that instinct alone won't keep him alive. Observation, strategy, and adaptation are the keys, and he has them all. He watches Micah at the edge of the firelight, pacing and muttering, trying to provoke or unsettle the younger riders. Deacon doesn't respond, but his presence is enough to create tension. Every subtle movement, every glance from Deacon shifts the camp dynamic without a single word. The younger men notice it, copying his quiet discipline, adopting his vigilance, and the influence grows almost imperceptibly. By the time the fire dies down to embers, Deacon's imprint on the group is clear. Instinct combined with experience shapes behavior faster than any command could. A noise from the tree line draws his attention. At first it seems like wind through the leaves, but he notices the rhythm, irregular and deliberate. His hand hovers near his revolver, muscles coiled, eyes sharp. In his world, sound dictated movement, survival, and strategy. A shadow flickers between trees. Deacon squints, identifying a lone human. Scavenger, hunter, or lost traveler, he cannot yet tell. His posture relaxes fractionally as the figure emerges into a sliver of moonlight, revealing a man carrying supplies, cautious but unthreatening. Still, Deacon notes every detail: gait, weight distribution, weapon placement, and probable intentions. His brain files it all away. In his world, every human encounter was a test, and habits die hard. Deacon allows himself to observe the stars above for a few seconds, the vastness humbling but grounding. In the apocalypse, nights were endless black voids, with only the faintest glimmers of artificial light far in the distance. Here, the universe stretches clearly, stars unpolluted, unbroken. The calm is deceptive. The horizon hides threats, and Deacon knows it. He remembers that even in worlds without hordes, humans carry the same chaos, the same capacity for destruction. The instinct honed in the dead world serves him well here, transforming potential panic into measured caution and clear strategy. Morning arrives with a fragile glow, filtering through the pines and dusting the valley floor in pale gold. Deacon rises early, performing his usual checks: terrain, perimeter, horses, and supplies. Every action is deliberate, economical, and informed by experience. The younger riders observe silently, gradually internalizing his methods. Charles moves beside him, noting Deacon's efficiency without comment, but the respect is evident. Even Micah hesitates before speaking, aware that Deacon's presence is not to be challenged lightly. As the group prepares to move, Deacon scouts ahead, tracing the edges of the valley, noting irregularities in the soil, broken branches, and faint animal trails. Every detail is information. He calculates escape routes, vantage points, and potential ambush locations with the precision of a man who has survived countless attacks by humans and monsters alike. By the time the group sets out, Deacon has already mapped the day's potential dangers, ensuring the path ahead is as secure as possible. By midday, the trail leads them to a shallow river crossing. Deacon dismounts first, carefully testing footing and water depth. He signals the riders to follow methodically, preventing congestion or missteps. Every detail, every precaution, reflects a survival mindset tempered in the chaos of his former world. Even here, in a slower-moving frontier, the lessons of hordes past dictate every decision: vigilance, efficiency, and adaptability. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the group sets up camp once more. Deacon positions himself at a ridge, scanning distant hills and valleys, reading shadows, and tracking subtle movements. The ghosts of past hordes are never far from his thoughts, but he channels their lessons into vigilance and strategy. Humans here may not be monsters, but they carry their own unpredictability. Bandits, desperate travelers, rival factions. Each represents a form of chaos that could turn deadly in an instant. Deacon is ready. The fire burns low as night takes hold, and Deacon reflects on the contrast between worlds. One was ruled by the relentless, unthinking horde, the other by cunning, deliberate humans. Both require vigilance, both demand adaptation. He has survived one, and in this new frontier, he applies the same principles: observation, preparation, and execution. Deacon St. John is no longer just a stranger in a foreign land. He is a force shaped by apocalypse, carrying the ghost of hordes passed into a world that will soon learn to respect him. The stars above shine like distant eyes watching silently, and Deacon knows that this frontier, while slower and seemingly less dangerous, is a battlefield in its own right. Tomorrow will bring tests, new challenges, humans with intentions unknown. But one truth remains constant: a man who has survived the end of one world is prepared to navigate the threats of another, and Deacon St. John is ready to face whatever the frontier throws at him. The morning sun rises pale and washed over the frontier town, casting long shadows from the wooden storefronts and wagons lined up along the dusty streets. Deacon St. John rides into town with a quiet confidence, his presence immediately drawing the attention of locals and outlaws alike. He is a stranger, yes, but not one to be underestimated. His eyes sweep over the buildings, noting the hidden vantage points, escape routes, and places where trouble might easily hide. He senses the undercurrent of tension almost immediately, the way humans carry danger when they are desperate or opportunistic. The outlaw world is slower, less chaotic than the hordes he once fought, but just as lethal in its own way. It thrives on greed, cunning, and unpredictability, and Deacon knows better than to mistake civility for safety. The first encounter comes quickly. A group of horsemen rides aggressively along the street, their leather coats dusty, hats tilted low. They are outlaws, seasoned by lawless living, sizing up newcomers for weakness. Deacon does not panic. He studies their movement, their spacing, the subtle cues of readiness in their hands and shoulders. Every instinct honed in the dead world clicks into place. He dismounts calmly, assessing whether the terrain around him offers advantage or threat. He positions himself in the open just enough to appear unthreatened, but his body language is measured, controlled, and prepared. The outlaws approach, circling, eyes flick into his revolver, and the way his hand hovers near it. One of the outlaws steps forward, swaggering, trying to provoke. Deacon meets the gaze evenly, unflinching, and in that moment the power dynamic shifts. Confidence born of experience outweighs brashness born of arrogance. The outlaws hesitate, sensing that Deacon is not a man who can be bullied or surprised. He assesses each one in milliseconds: height, weight, strength, likely weapon handling skills, and probable tactics. His response is measured, precise. He does not threaten, but he does not back down either. Survival here is about control, not just of weapons, but of perception. The standoff stretches, tension thick like fog. Deacon reads the micro-expressions of each outlaw. Eye movement, finger placement, breathing rhythm. He calculates who might attack first, how they would approach, and the angles they would favor. In his world, these instincts were often the difference between life and death in seconds. Here, the calculus is the same, only slower, with room for strategy and psychology. Deacon shifts subtly, adjusting stance and gaze, signaling to the outlaws that any misstep will be met with immediate consequence. One of the younger riders accompanying him whispers, anxious, unsure of what to do. Deacon's eyes flick toward them briefly, a silent instruction to remain calm and observe. In this environment, fear is a liability. Focus is a weapon. The outlaws start to circle, testing the newcomer, but the careful calculation in Deacon's posture communicates experience beyond what words could convey. They sense the danger he represents, not from brute force, but from the quiet, unyielding competence of a man who has survived apocalypse and humanity alike. Deacon decides to assert subtle control without escalating. He speaks evenly, almost casually, introducing himself and gauging their response. The outlaws flinch at the tone, noting that it carries no submission, no hesitation. In that exchange, Deacon establishes dominance without violence. They recognize a man who is not ordinary, who does not panic, who does not fear confrontation. The standoff dissolves gradually as the outlaws back off slightly, reconsidering whether a fight is worth the risk. Deacon is won without a shot being fired. Moving further into town, Deacon studies the infrastructure: alleyways, rooftops, saloons, and trading posts. Each building is a potential threat or opportunity. He notices patterns of movement among townsfolk and outlaws, calculating the safest paths, anticipating potential conflicts. In the old world, danger was immediate, explosive, and relentless. Here, it is slower, insidious, requiring patience, observation, and careful judgment. He adapts instinctively, blending his post-apocalyptic tactics with the subtleties of the outlaw frontier. By midday, Deacon finds himself outside of a saloon where rumors of a local gang's activity are whispered in town. The building sits at a strategic corner with multiple vantage points and a back alley leading to escape routes. Deacon observes silently, noting who enters and exits, the timing of movements, and how the gang members interact with each other and the townsfolk. He identifies hierarchy, strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies. His analysis is quiet, rapid, and precise. The way he survived hordes only now applied to humans who are cunning, patient, and equally dangerous. A lone rider exits the saloon, suspicious and scanning the street. Deacon notes every detail: horse behavior, rider's posture, hand placement, and gait. The rider spots him, pauses, and instinctively reaches toward a weapon. Deacon tilts his head slightly, calm but commanding attention, a silent assertion of presence and control. The rider hesitates, reevaluating the threat. Even in this slower-paced world, the same rules apply. Humans are predators, and survival depends on reading them first. As the day stretches on, Deacon continues his methodical observation, moving quietly through the streets, assessing danger, mapping territory, and establishing his presence. Each interaction, each movement, each glance carries weight. The outlaw world is slower than the apocalypse he once knew, but it is just as unforgiving. In every shadow, in every corner, there is potential threat. And Deacon St. John, tempered by a world that ended and refined by instincts honed through loss, is ready to navigate it with the same unflinching focus that allowed him to survive hordes and horrors in a dead world. The frontier hums with life, lawless and chaotic in its own measured way, and Deacon realizes something crucial. Humans are monsters too, just slower, deliberate, and strategic. The rules have changed, but survival remains the same. Observation, patience, adaptability, and action. These are constants in any world, and Deacon has mastered them all. The afternoon sun beats down as Deacon continues his exploration of the town, moving deliberately through streets that are both alive and dangerous. He notes the way outlaws interact with the townsfolk. Subtle intimidation, fleeting glances, quick exchanges that could easily escalate into violence. Every gesture, every hesitation, every nervous twitch tells a story. Deacon reads it all instinctively, the way he once read cities under siege, highways crawling with threats, and abandoned buildings filled with unseen danger. Humans here may not be infected, but their unpredictability carries a quiet, dangerous pulse. He moves toward a trading post on the edge of town, careful to stay in the shadows where possible, observing the comings and goings of townsfolk and riders. Two outlaws sit near the doorway, hands resting near holsters, eyes flicking constantly to anyone approaching. Deacon studies them without making sudden moves, noting patterns. Which one is quicker to react? Which one watches the street more closely? Which one is likely bluffing about confidence? Every small detail informs how he will navigate encounters in the hours to come. He knows intimidation works here, but overconfidence is dangerous. A group of riders approaches the edge of town, seemingly unaware of Deacon's presence. He steps back into a shadowed alley, body pressed against the wall, eyes tracking them. The riders are aggressive, likely scouting for opportunities, looking for someone they can bully or rob. Deacon notices the spacing, the subtle cues in their posture, the way their leader signals. His mind maps escape routes, positions for cover, and points of advantage. Unlike the mindless hordes he once fought, these humans think strategically, and survival here requires matching that strategy without revealing his hand. One of the younger riders in his company whispers from behind, unsure of how to handle the tension. Deacon glances briefly, giving a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, instructing calm and observation. The key here is awareness, not reaction. Panic is contagious, but precision is lethal. The approaching group moves past the alley without incident, unaware of the presence, observing and calculating every step. Deacon lets the tension leave his shoulders slowly, but only just. In a world ruled by humans, calm is fleeting, and danger can emerge from any corner. By mid-afternoon, Deacon makes his way toward the saloon, a central hub of gossip, information, and potential conflict. He notes the entrance, windows, and side alleyways, thinking several steps ahead. Inside, conversations are low and cautious, the air thick with smoke and quiet tension. Outlaws and townsfolk mix uneasily, each aware that one misstep can trigger violence. Deacon listens, watches, and memorizes patterns. Who reacts to threats first, who holds authority, who tends to escalate situations unnecessarily. In a dead world, survival was about speed and reflex. Here, it's about observation, calculation, and timing. He spots a man at the bar whose demeanor screams caution mixed with arrogance. Deacon studies him, noting how his hand hovers near a revolver at subtle intervals, how his eyes dart toward potential threats, and how he communicates silently with companions. Humans are predators in their own right, and the frontier demands understanding them just as much as understanding the land. Deacon nods slightly to himself, cataloging the details like markers on a mental map. The saloon is not just a place for information, it is a testing ground. Deacon moves slowly, deliberately, maintaining posture and composure that radiates control. Even the outlaws who notice him cannot read weakness. His reputation, unspoken and unearned here, grows simply from his precision and calm. A challenge, a question, or a provocation could arrive at any moment, but Deacon is ready. He has survived hordes and chaos beyond imagining. A few human outlaws, no matter how clever, will not unbalance him. By late afternoon, Deacon steps outside, blending into the warm light of the town square. He moves like a man who has seen every possible angle of survival, each motion intentional, each glance calculated. The outlaw world is patient, deliberate, and ruthless in its own way. Deacon recognizes this and adjusts seamlessly, applying the lessons of a dead world to a living frontier. Observation, patience, adaptability, and decisive action remain the constants. In this town, humans are the new monsters, and Deacon St. John is already learning to dominate them without a single shot fired. Evening begins to settle over the town, painting the wooden buildings in long golden shadows that stretch across the dusty streets. Deacon moves with quiet purpose, his senses alert to every whisper of movement, every flicker of light through windows, every subtle shift in the posture of passers-by. Outlaws, like predators, move with a rhythm of observation and dominance. They size up strangers, they test reactions, and they exploit hesitation. Deacon does none of these. He observes, calculates, and positions himself in ways that communicate competence without aggression, mastery without arrogance. This is a lesson learned in a dead world. Presence alone can be more powerful than bullets. As the saloon doors swing open and close with muted creaks, he notices the subtle tension between the patrons inside. Hands hover near holsters, eyes scan entrances. Conversations are broken into hushed tones. Deacon reads the room effortlessly. Every gesture, every glance, every shift in weight tells him more than words ever could. He notes alliances, rivalries, and potential threats. A small group in the corner signals with a subtle nod, likely confirming the arrival of someone new. A newcomer like him. Deacon tenses slightly, not with fear, but with focus. His instincts are trained to recognize the signs of danger long before it arrives. Outside, the streets themselves are a chessboard. He observes a group of outlaws moving toward the outskirts, likely testing the town's defenses or searching for someone to rob. Deacon studies their spacing, gait, and hand placement. Each detail is crucial, each action a potential signal of intent. He maps escape routes, identifies cover positions, and predicts patterns of movement. In his world, speed and reflex were survival. Here, patience and calculation are just as lethal. By anticipating their movements, he ensures that any confrontation would favor him without needing to reveal his hand. A sudden shout breaks the relative calm. A minor dispute over a game of cards spilling out onto the street. The outlaws are drawn in automatically, sensing an opportunity to assert dominance. Deacon steps back into the shadows, observing the unfolding chaos. His presence alone seems to influence the scene. Neither side notices him, yet the outcome is shaped by the order he imposes subconsciously through his posture and awareness. The dispute resolves without escalation, a subtle testament to the power of controlled observation. As the sun sinks lower, Deacon turns his attention to a back alley where movement catches his eye. Two men pass hurriedly, glancing over their shoulders. He recognizes the signs of caution mixed with intent. One carries a satchel, the other a concealed weapon. His pulse quickens subtly, not from fear, but from focus. Humans in this world are deliberate. Every action is calculated. Deacon matches their rhythm instinctively, moving to maintain cover while keeping the pair in sight. He notes where they go, how they interact, and what patterns of behavior they reveal. Charles finds him near the edge of the alley, leaning lightly against a wooden post. He nods silently, signaling awareness and approval. Deacon doesn't respond verbally. None is needed. The lesson is in the precision, the discipline, the unspoken communication of a man who has survived the collapse of his world and now navigates the frontier with the same sharp instincts. Even Micah, circling nearby like a predator testing boundaries, notices the subtle control Deacon exerts without effort. His presence alone recalibrates the dynamics of the town, quietly imposing order through competence. By twilight, Deacon moves to a vantage point overlooking the main street, observing patterns. Who moves where, how quickly, how confidently. He notes the timing of guards, the flow of townsfolk, the habits of those who thrive in lawlessness. Each observation feeds a mental map of strategy and opportunity. In the dead world, this instinct kept him alive against overwhelming odds. In this outlaw frontier, it grants him influence and control, a silent but undeniable authority that others recognize before words are spoken. Night falls fully, and the town glows under lanterns, shadows long and shifting. Deacon positions himself at the edge of the central square, blending into darkness while maintaining awareness of every possible angle of attack. Outlaws and townsfolk alike move within his calculated field of observation, unaware that their patterns are being read, their strengths and weaknesses cataloged. Here, the outlaw world moves slower than a horde of infected ever could, but it is just as dangerous. Patience, observation, adaptability, and decisive action remain the constants. Deacon St. John has entered this world, and already the laws of survival bend around him. Even as the town sleeps uneasily, Deacon remains vigilant. The ghosts of his past, the horde-ravaged world he survived, linger in his reflexes, his discipline, and his focus. Humans may be slower than monsters, but they are cunning and cruel in ways that demand respect. Deacon has mastered one world. Now he adapts to another. The outlaw frontier is alive, unpredictable, and lethal, but he is ready. Every movement, every glance, every decision is informed by experience, sharpened instinct, and calculated awareness. The night belongs to the watchful, and Deacon St. John watches with unyielding precision. The night deepens, cool and silent, save for the distant howl of a coyote and the occasional creak of wagon wheels in the town square. Deacon St. John remains poised on the edge of the shadows, his eyes sweeping the streets, rooftops, and alleyways with a practiced vigilance. He understands instinctively that danger here is patient, deliberate, and often masked by normalcy. Unlike the chaotic rush of hordes, humans in this frontier take time to plan, to watch, to manipulate. Every movement carries intent, every gesture may conceal threat. Deacon reads it all, his senses sharpened by a lifetime surviving the unpredictable, the relentless, and the lethal. He notes a group of riders moving quietly along the far street, their coats dark against the glow of lanterns. They scan buildings, mutter low instructions, and move in patterns that suggest scouting, perhaps even planning an ambush. Deacon calculates their speed, their spacing, the reach of their weapons, and the angles of approach. He identifies choke points along the streets, potential cover, and vantage positions where a single well-placed individual could control outcomes. The instincts that once saved him from hordes now map human behavior with uncanny accuracy. One wrong move by them, or by the town's inhabitants, could spark conflict. Deacon positions himself so that if trouble arises, he can act decisively without exposing himself unnecessarily. Nearby, the younger riders under his tacit guidance move cautiously, their posture improved, their attention sharper. Charles observes silently, impressed with the subtle influence Deacon exerts over the group. Even Micah, restless and brash, seems to hesitate at times, wary of Deacon's calm yet commanding presence. Deacon doesn't seek recognition. He doesn't need it. His impact is felt through efficiency, awareness, and the quiet authority that comes from mastery of survival. The town may be lawless, but a single man who understands strategy, observation, and control can alter the balance without a single gunshot. A sudden shout erupts from the far end of the square. A dispute over a game of cards, a theft, or perhaps a challenge to dominance. Outlaws rush toward it, hands hovering near holsters, eyes scanning for opportunities. Deacon moves instantly, without panic, adjusting his position to remain unseen while tracking every movement. He notes which individuals are leaders, which are followers, which act impulsively. He predicts potential outcomes and plans contingencies in real time. The dispute escalates, but Deacon's presence, unseen yet influential, subtly shapes the outcome. The aggressors hesitate, the conflict diffuses before reaching lethal proportions. Observation, patience, and presence, he knows, often wield more power than bullets. By the time the fire lanterns cast long shadows across the town, Deacon has mapped nearly every corner of this outlaw world in his mind. He knows where threats could emerge, where ambushes might be set, and which individuals carry authority or aggression. Unlike the mindless hordes he once faced, these humans are cunning, deliberate, and capable of cruelty. But they also have predictable patterns that can be read, anticipated, and leveraged. Survival here is not about reflex alone. It's about foresight, calculation, and restraint. A lone figure crosses a rooftop in the fading light, scouting, testing, perhaps planning. Deacon's hand rests lightly near his revolver, eyes tracking movement. He calculates the distance, the timing, and possible outcomes. He considers if intervention is necessary or if observation will yield more information. His years surviving apocalypse have trained him to balance patience with action, knowing that sometimes restraint preserves life more effectively than engagement. Here, in the outlaw frontier, those lessons are as relevant as ever. Night settles fully over the town, the lanterns casting golden pools of light, shadows stretching across the dusty streets. Deacon takes a slow breath, muscles relaxed but ready, mind scanning continuously. He reflects on the stark contrast between his past world of collapse and this frontier of lawlessness. One was chaos incarnate, relentless and overt. This is a slower, subtler threat, patient and cunning. Yet both require the same constants: awareness, adaptability, precision, and decisive action. As he moves silently through the town, he notes alliances forming, rivalries simmering, and subtle power struggles that dictate human behavior. Deacon knows that the ability to predict, influence, and act decisively will determine who survives and who falls. He has already demonstrated his capacity for this in small ways at first, now in increasingly noticeable ways. The younger riders follow his lead instinctively, the town unknowingly bending around the influence of a man forged in a dead world. By midnight, Deacon finds a vantage point overlooking the central street. Lanterns glow faintly below, shadows move with quiet purpose, and the town breathes in its own rhythm of tension and opportunity. He reflects briefly on the lessons of both worlds. The horde taught speed, reflex, and the necessity of unrelenting vigilance. Humans in this frontier teach patience, observation, and strategic thinking. Deacon St. has mastered both. The outlaw world may be lawless, cunning, and slow, but it is also predictable in ways that instinct and experience can exploit. Deacon knows that tomorrow will bring challenges, tests of influence, and perhaps violence. But he is ready. Every step, every glance, every decision is informed by years surviving apocalypse and horror. The town's outlaws may be clever, its streets treacherous, but Deacon St. has entered this world as a calculated, unstoppable force. He doesn't just survive here. He adapts, shapes, and dominates without drawing unnecessary attention. The night stretches on, and Deacon's eyes scan the horizon. The outlaw world moves with deliberate menace, but he moves with the certainty of someone who has faced death countless times and lived. Every shadow, every flicker, Every subtle motion in the streets below is cataloged in his mind. He is no longer just a visitor in this world. He is a presence, a force shaped by apocalypse, carrying the lessons of hordes past into a frontier ruled by cunning and lawlessness. The streets belong to no one, but tonight they belong to him. Before we dive in, I've got a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it? Drop it in the comments. It's always wild seeing how far these stories travel. Now, imagine this. Deacon St. John, a man who has survived a world overrun by death, disease, and chaos, suddenly steps into the Red Dead Redemption 2 universe. He rides into the sprawling wilderness on horseback, the dust of the trail kicking up behind him, and every tree, every ridge, every whisper of wind carries potential danger. He doesn't belong here. Not by origin, not by time, not by the rules of this new world. Yet his presence immediately alters the rhythm of life around him. Animals freeze in the distance as if sensing the quiet intensity of a survivor unlike any they have known, and humans glance nervously at the horizon where his silhouette rides past. Deacon moves with the caution of a man who knows what it means to be hunted, yet the freedom of this world is intoxicating. The frontier stretches out endlessly before him, rivers snaking through valleys, cliffs rising in sharp defiance, forests thick with secrets. He is not constrained by loyalty to any gang, any town, or any law. The Red Dead universe is a land ruled by ambition, desperation, and survival, yet Deacon operates on principles forged in apocalypse. Awareness, adaptability, and cold, precise judgment. Every step he takes seems to belong both to the present and to another time entirely, a ghost moving through a living world. The townsfolk quickly notice him, a lone rider with sharp eyes and an unyielding posture. They whisper, first among themselves, then aloud, trying to make sense of a man who seems to command the air around him without effort. Outlaws pause mid-action, their hands hovering over their holsters, unsure whether he is an ally, a threat, or something else entirely. Deacon does not reveal himself unnecessarily. His eyes scan, his ears catch every sound. The cracking of a branch, the shifting of a wagon wheel, the soft tread of a boot across a boardwalk. Every detail is vital because survival here is different than survival in the dead world, yet it is no less demanding. As he rides, Deacon's thoughts drift briefly to the people he has encountered. Charles, a steady and loyal companion. Micah, unpredictable and reckless. The younger riders, impressionable yet capable. Each has taught him something. Each reflects a facet of humanity he has long protected himself from. And yet here, in this frontier, he applies those lessons differently. The Red Dead world tests him not through endless hordes of infected, but through subtle threats, deliberate human malice, and the unrelenting pressure of lawless survival. Deacon's instincts, honed in the chaos of a dead world, now shape his interactions in a living one. He arrives at a ridge overlooking a sprawling valley, the sun beginning its descent, casting long shadows over the wilderness. Below, a gang of outlaws conducts their business unaware of the observer above. Deacon studies them silently, cataloging weapon placements, timing, behaviors, and hierarchies. Unlike the mindless hordes, these humans think, manipulate, and strategize. Deacon respects that intelligence, yet he does not fear it. He has survived beings driven solely by hunger and instinct. Humans with motives are complicated but readable with attention, patience, and experience. Every twitch, every glance, every subtle movement becomes data he stores for future encounters. The wind shifts slightly, carrying scents and sounds from below. Deacon adjusts his stance, half crouched in shadow, fully aware that even the quietest rider could be seen as an intruder in this world. But he does not rush, does not panic. His world taught him that haste is the enemy of survival. He observes, predicts, and waits for the perfect moment to act, should action be required. The humans below move with confidence, unaware that their actions are being mapped, their hierarchy analyzed, their weaknesses cataloged. In a world ruled by human cunning, foresight becomes the most powerful weapon. As evening falls, Deacon begins to descend toward the valley, moving through brush and over rocks with silent precision. Every footstep is calculated to avoid detection. The valley opens up into a river bend, water flowing steadily, reflecting the orange and crimson hues of sunset. Here, the world feels alive in a way that is almost intoxicating. Birds cry out, fish leap in the current, and the wind carries a mix of pine and dust. Yet for Deacon, the beauty is secondary to survival. He watches the movements of the people along the riverbank, the shifts in posture, the tiny cues of tension and alertness. In his eyes, nothing is accidental. A small group of riders approaches the river from the opposite bank. They are clearly patrolling territory, their horses' hooves striking lightly against the ground. Deacon observes, noting numbers, distance, and positioning. He does not fear confrontation, yet he knows the value of choosing engagements wisely. In the dead world, any threat could be lethal within seconds. Here, humans move slower but with strategy, and understanding that strategy is the key to dominance. Deacon's presence is a question mark in their minds. A lone rider who doesn't belong to their time, whose skill and observation surpass expectation, commands attention without a word. By twilight, Deacon finds a small clearing, a perfect vantage point to observe the river and the movement along it. The wind brushes through the grass, and he feels the subtle pull of being both an outsider and an authority at once. The red dead world, with its intricate web of human behavior and opportunity, begins to bend to his perception. Deacon can see patterns forming, choices emerging, and the subtle power dynamics at play. Here, he is not just surviving. He is understanding, calculating, and positioning himself to influence outcomes in ways few in this world could anticipate. The valley darkens, and lanterns flicker along distant trails. Deacon remains vigilant, aware that night in the frontier carries both possibility and danger. The humans below may not act as a horde, but their capacity for cruelty, greed, and ambition is profound. And yet, for all their strategy, they are predictable to someone who has survived chaos that no human could orchestrate. Deacon St. John rides along the ridge, a shadow in the twilight. The rider who doesn't belong to time, moving through a world that is not his own, yet already bending subtly to his mastery. The stars emerge above, silent witnesses to a man out of place, yet perfectly attuned to the rhythm of survival. He contemplates the coming days, knowing that every human encounter will be a test of patience, observation, and action, the lessons of his past world. Speed, awareness, reflex, and calculated violence converge with the demands of the red dead frontier. Strategy, psychology, and timing. Deacon St. John, the rider who doesn't belong to time, is poised at the intersection of both, ready to navigate threats, seize opportunities, and leave an indelible mark on a world that cannot yet comprehend him. The night air grows colder, and Deacon crouches slightly, his eyes scanning the horizon. Every movement, every shadow, every faint whisper of sound is catalogued. He is not a man constrained by allegiance or loyalty. He belongs only to the rules of survival, and those rules are universal. Observe, anticipate, act decisively. In this frontier, humans may rule, but Deacon operates above and beyond their understanding, a force defined by experience, instinct, and mastery. The frontier may test him, challenge him, and even threaten him, but he will meet it with the precision and focus of a man who has survived the end of one world and now rides into another. The stars shine overhead, and the valley lies quiet beneath him. Deacon St. John sits poised, ready, unyielding. He is not part of this time, this place, or their laws. Yet he moves within it with a clarity and authority born of a dead world. Every shadow holds information, every human interaction is a potential lesson, and every decision shapes outcomes in ways no one below can anticipate. The rider who doesn't belong to time is here, and the red dead frontier will never be the same. The first hints of dawn begin to touch the horizon, painting the valley in muted shades of gold and gray. Deacon St. John remains on the ridge, still and watchful, as if the world itself bends to his attention. The red dead landscape stretches endlessly before him, rivers curving like silver threads, forests thick and silent, and distant mountains etched in morning mist. In this new world, time seems slower, measured by horse hooves and the rise and fall of the sun, rather than by the relentless urgency of survival he once knew. Yet Deacon's presence feels like a pulse against that slow rhythm, a reminder that experience carved in apocalypse can outpace even the most deliberate human designs. Below, the valley begins to stir. Traders wheel carts along dusty paths, riders adjust their saddles, and the occasional lone figure crosses the horizon, eyes alert to their surroundings. Deacon tracks each of them with precision, noting patterns and behaviors. A man pauses by the riverbank, surveying the water, unconsciously revealing his priorities: control of resources, risk awareness, and attention to environment. Another moves too confidently, revealing a gap in vigilance. Deacon catalogs it all silently, creating a mental map of threats and opportunities that will guide him in the hours to come. This is observation honed to art, a skill born in a world where a single misstep could end life. As the morning progresses, Deacon begins to descend toward the valley. His horse moves silently, hooves careful and deliberate, following paths of least exposure. Every movement is calculated. The outlaws and townsfolk below continue their routines, unaware of the figure watching, learning, and adapting above them. Deacon's eyes scan constantly. The angle of the sun, shadows stretching across terrain, potential cover, and the subtle signs of movement in the grass and trees. He measures distance and timing instinctively, calculating the advantage he holds simply by being attuned to the environment. He comes across a group of riders clearly patrolling or scouting. Their postures are casual but alert, hands lingering near weapons. Deacon pauses in the brush, noting spacing, hierarchy, and individual behavior. One rider keeps glancing toward the hills, nervous, possibly inexperienced. Another moves with confidence that borders on recklessness. Deacon calculates probabilities, anticipating how a confrontation might unfold. In his world, such instincts were matters of life and death against monsters. Here, humans may be slower and more deliberate, but they are cunning, and mistakes are just as costly. Deacon's presence begins to influence the rhythm of the valley subtly. Even without confrontation, the outlaws and townsfolk adjust unconsciously to his movements. The balance of power shifts without a single word, a testament to the authority of a man who has survived a world far harsher than this one. He moves along the ridge, scanning vantage points and routes, creating mental contingencies for any scenario: ambush, chase, or negotiation. Every decision is informed by experience, instinct, and foresight. The slower tempo of this world allows him to integrate lessons from his past with strategy applicable here. By late morning, Deacon reaches a small clearing near the river. The current glints like silver under the sun, and birds rise from the banks in startled flurries. He observes carefully, noting human and animal activity. A lone figure moves along the opposite bank, scanning, cautious but deliberate. Deacon identifies potential intentions, probable reaction times, and avenues of approach. The rider does not move hastily. This is the frontier, a world of patience and observation, and Deacon has already mastered both. In his presence, every movement becomes part of a larger calculation, every human instinct cataloged and weighed. The river valley is alive with subtle motion. Riders adjust their paths, animals shift nervously. and the wind carries scents and sounds that reveal more than words ever could. Deacon St. John operates like a force both inside and outside this world, a man whose experience of apocalypse allows him to see patterns and anticipate threats that no ordinary human could. He is a rider untethered by time, moving with clarity, focus, and purpose. Every step is a lesson in awareness, every glance a measure of calculation. The frontier may test patience, strategy, and skill, but Deacon is ready to shape the outcomes before conflict ever arises. By midday, he positions himself near a hidden outcrop overlooking the main trail. From here, he can monitor movement, anticipate encounters, and assess risk with minimal exposure. The humans along the path are predictable to him in ways they cannot imagine. One approaches confidently, unaware of the observer above. Another hesitates, pausing to check their surroundings. Deacon notes their patterns, predicting behavior, and aligning potential responses. His presence in this world is transformative, not through the brute force, but through observation, strategy, and the quiet, undeniable influence of mastery. The valley breathes around him, alive with quiet opportunity and subtle threat. Deacon remains poised, the rider who doesn't belong to time, a ghost in this frontier, shaping outcomes with every measured movement. The Red Dead universe may have its own rules, its own dangers, and its own tempo, but Deacon St. John navigates it as if he belongs to all worlds simultaneously, past, present, and the liminal space between. Survival here, as always, will depend on vigilance, adaptation, and the quiet authority of a man forged in the apocalypse. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, the valley opens further into rolling hills dotted with trees and rocky outcrops. Deacon St. John rides steadily along a worn trail, moving silently through the landscape. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of movement is recorded in his mind, like pages in a book. He is both observer and actor, reading the frontier as though it were a map of human behavior and danger. Riders along distant trails adjust unconsciously to his presence, the weight of someone who has survived the end of one world impossible to ignore. Deacon doesn't need to engage directly to influence the flow of the valley. His focus, his posture, his instinctive awareness shift the rhythm of life around him. A small cluster of riders appears on a ridge ahead, silhouetted against the pale sky. They seem confident, experienced, yet their confidence carries subtle hints of arrogance. Deacon studies them carefully, noting spacing, patterns of movement, and hand positions near weapons. His experience against hordes of the dead has trained him to read even the smallest cues. A twitch, a glance, a hesitation. And here, those skills translate perfectly to human behavior. He calculates angles of approach, timing, and escape, mentally rehearsing outcomes without drawing attention to himself. Observation, patience, and anticipation are his weapons. Action comes only when it maximizes advantage. Descending toward the riders, Deacon keeps to shadows, blending with the natural contours of the land. Every hoofbeat is deliberate, every movement calculated to avoid detection. He notes which riders are likely scouts, which are followers, and which are potential threats. In his world, survival demanded acute awareness. In this one, it is strategy and leverage. Humans are slower than hordes, but they are intelligent, and intelligence, Deacon knows, can be just as dangerous as instinct. His mind races not with panic but with clarity, predicting behaviors and possible interactions before they occur. The riders ahead pause, scanning the horizon. Deacon studies their responses, the way their eyes move, the subtle signals they exchange. He identifies leaders, the impulsive and the cautious, mentally cataloging strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies, even small environmental cues. The rustle of grass, the direction of wind, the slope of the land inform his analysis. He is not merely surviving. He is learning, adapting, and positioning himself as an unseen force capable of influencing outcomes in ways the outlaws cannot anticipate. Moving closer, Deacon notices a narrow ravine to his right. The slope offers both cover and a potential escape route. He calculates its advantage, how quickly he could descend, how the riders might react, and how to leverage terrain to his benefit. In a world where humans are predators and the frontier itself is unpredictable, understanding geography becomes as vital as understanding behavior. Deacon's experience has taught him that survival is never about brute force alone. It is about perception, timing, and control of both the environment and the narrative. A lone rider breaks from the group, riding toward the river that winds through the valley. Deacon observes carefully, noting pace, direction, and hand movements. Every detail feeds his mental map, every decision refining his understanding of this world. The rider's confidence is evident, but there is also hesitation, a subtle awareness of unseen eyes. Deacon recognizes it immediately. Instinct sharpened in the apocalypse allows him to sense not just visible threats, but intangible tension, the rhythm of unease that humans rarely conceal perfectly. By late afternoon, Deacon reaches the riverbank, where the water glints in the fading light. He dismounts carefully, letting his horse graze while maintaining vigilance. Across the river, movement catches his eye. A small party of riders gathering, likely coordinating their next move. Deacon studies their behavior, the positions of their horses, the signals exchanged, and the potential for confrontation. In the apocalypse, threats came in swarms. Here, they come in patience and calculation. The danger is quieter, slower, but no less deadly. Every move must be deliberate, every observation meticulous, and every decision precise. The valley is alive with activity. Outlaws marking territory, townsfolk moving cautiously, wildlife reacting subtly to human presence. Deacon stands partially concealed, watching, listening, cataloging. He is both inside and outside this world, a rider untethered by its rules, yet completely attuned to its rhythms. Every observation is a lesson, every detail a potential advantage. He understands the frontier not as a place, but as a living, breathing network of cause and effect, danger and opportunity. His past has taught him that understanding patterns is survival. Here, that principle elevates him above ordinary humans. As evening approaches, shadows lengthen, and the air cools, carrying the scent of pine, earth, and river. Deacon moves silently to a vantage point overlooking both river and trail, eyes scanning continuously. The humans below continue their routines, unaware of his presence, unaware that a force shaped by apocalypse watches, predicts, and adapts. Deacon St. John is no ordinary rider in this world. He is a shadow untethered from time, a survivor who belongs to no era, yet dominates any space he enters. Every movement, every decision, and every observation positions him to act decisively when the moment arises. The valley hums with life and tension simultaneously. Deacon remains poised, his mind cataloging possibilities, threats, and advantages. In the dead world, instincts guided him. Here, strategy and patience extend that power. He has become a force both seen and unseen, shaping outcomes subtly, mastering the frontier without ever drawing attention to himself. The rider who doesn't belong to time has found a new world to navigate, and every step he takes echoes with experience, precision, and unspoken authority. Night falls fully over the valley, draping the river, trees, and trails in deep indigo shadows. Deacon St. John remains poised on his perch, a silent sentinel over a world that doesn't yet understand him. The frontier's quiet hum of life, crickets chirping, the soft murmur of water, the distant neigh of horses, blends seamlessly with his measured breath. To any ordinary observer, he might seem like just another rider moving cautiously through the wilderness. But Deacon is far from ordinary. Every step he takes, every glance he casts, every decision he makes is informed by a lifetime surviving a world where chaos and death were constants. This is a man who has lived through apocalypse, and yet here, in the Red Dead universe, he navigates a slower, subtler form of danger with equal mastery. Across the valley, lanterns flicker in the distance, illuminating small outposts, townsfolk, and the occasional outlaw patrolling their territory. Deacon watches quietly, cataloging movement and behavior. He observes the tension in human posture, the micro-expressions that betray fear or cunning, and the subtle ways alliances reveal themselves in glances and gestures. Unlike the mindless hordes he once fought, these humans think, anticipate, and manipulate. Yet for Deacon, their complexity is something he can decode. He doesn't need to act to assert control. His presence alone reshapes the environment, subtly influencing the actions of those around him. Humans are predators here, but predators can be predicted, outmaneuvered, and understood. Deacon moves along the ridge with the grace of someone whose survival has depended on instinct honed to perfection. He spots a group of riders attempting to flank a small settlement. Without hesitation, he calculates the angles, the approach, and the terrain. A shallow ravine to the side could serve as cover. A rocky outcrop offers a perfect vantage point. The river's bend could mask his movement while providing an escape if needed. In his world, life and death were instantaneous. Here, patience and precision are his allies. Deacon positions himself accordingly, not to strike yet, but to understand and control the potential outcome. Time passes almost imperceptibly as Deacon watches the dynamics of this new world unfold. He notes how townsfolk interact with authority, how outlaws assert dominance, and how patterns of behavior shift in response to perceived threats. In the dead world, chaos had a rhythm. Here, the rhythm is subtler, human, calculated, and at times cruel. Yet Deacon's eyes see it all. The lessons of survival against the hordes are applied differently now, transformed into anticipation, influence, and strategic positioning. Every movement he observes is stored, analyzed, and integrated into a mental map that spans the valley. As the moon rises, silver in the water and dust in the landscape with pale light, Deacon reflects briefly. He is a man out of time, unbound by loyalty to any group, any era, or any law. His past has forged him, his instincts sharpened him, and his experience has taught him to dominate the interplay of threat and opportunity without unnecessary exposure. He has become both observer and arbiter, a quiet authority moving through a world of human predators. The Red Dead universe tests him in ways his previous world did not, yet he adapts effortlessly. Instinct and strategy converge in him, a perfect blend honed in apocalypse but fully capable of mastering a living, breathing frontier. The outlaws below finally make their move, unaware of Deacon's presence and silent control over the situation. He does not intervene directly. He only observes, letting events unfold according to the patterns he has already anticipated. The result is subtle yet decisive. A misstep by one rider, hesitation by another, and the balance of power shifts without violence. Deacon's influence is complete, a demonstration that survival does not always require direct action. Awareness, patience, and calculated presence can bend a world to one's advantage. Finally, as the night reaches its deepest hour, Deacon mounts his horse once more. He pauses to survey the valley, taking in the rivers, the ridges, the town below, and the trails winding endlessly into the distance. This world, rich with its own dangers, opportunities, and rules, has been tested against him, and he has adapted. He's not merely surviving, he is mastering. The rider who doesn't belong to time has become a presence that the frontier itself will acknowledge, whether humans recognize it or not. His instincts, honed in one world, have been transformed into tools that allow him to navigate another with precision, authority, and calm. As he rides toward the horizon, the first light of dawn beginning to chase away the shadows, Deacon St. John disappears into the expanse of the Red Dead frontier. He leaves behind subtle shifts in the environment, minor adjustments in the behavior of humans, and an unspoken warning to those who might underestimate him. A man forged by apocalypse, carrying the lessons of hordes past into a world ruled by human ambition and lawlessness. He is the rider who doesn't belong to time. And that's where we'll leave Deacon for now. A man out of his world, a force out of time, and a presence the Red Dead universe will never forget. If you enjoyed this journey across worlds, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next CrossWorld adventure. Comment below. Where would you want to see Deacon St. John go next, and which universe should he challenge? The possibilities are endless, and we'll explore them all together.